mermaids, and welcome to the Dive Like a Girl podcast, where a couple times a month we talk all things scuba diving with women from all across the world. I'm your host, Rachel, and I'm the founder of Midwest Mermaids and the Dive Like a Girl podcast. And every single month we'll have a couple of episodes talking to people from all over the world about dive topics like cave diving and conservation and just the fun stuff too. Let's dive in.
Hello, mermaids, and welcome back to the Dive Like a Girl podcast. It is just me and Tara tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about managing expectations because all of us have been in a situation where we got somewhere and we had expectations of how that was going to go, and then it did not go that way. But first, Tara is fresh back from her Liveaboard in Galápagos. So how did it go?
It was great. One really cool thing that I got to see was the red lip batfish that they also consider the Angelina Jolie fish because it has bright red lips. And it has legs. It's like a mixture of a frog and a fish, and it was actually a really cool thing to see. And then also scuba diving with the sea lions and doing a little twist and turn and them mimicking me doing it. And there's also vampire ground finches. So when they are scarce on resources and stuff like that, they peck on other birds and drink their blood.
Oh my gosh.
So vampires are real.
So is Galápagos where they have like the iguanas that swim through the water?
Yes, I got to do that with the iguanas. I got a really great video. So we're scuba diving, but it's pretty much your snorkel scuba diving because you don't go that deep whatsoever. So I got this really cool video where he's like swimming on top and then all of a sudden he comes down and kind of towards me and then gets on a rock and he starts eating while he's down there. So yeah, that was also
crazy.
Really cool. Yeah.
That's so crazy. Well, that is definitely on my list. We went to Belize for a couple of weeks. So it's still exciting, but I did not see iguanas. But we were at Lighthouse Atoll. We were on Half Moon Cay again, Half Moon Cay Wall. And I don't know if you saw the video or not, but like there's this guy in front of me and there's this grouper, this big old grouper that lives in this swim through. Like we've ran into him before. And he was literally like swimming up, like almost chasing the guy. And so I'm, videotaping this guy trying to get away from a grouper. And all of a sudden, I'm getting ready to turn the camera off. And right as I'm getting ready to turn the camera off, this Caribbean reef shark starts swimming straight towards me. And I'm like, okay, hold still. So I was just like really, really still. And he swam like right by my face. And I was like, my gosh, that was the closest encounter I have ever had with a shark ever. And what was funny is on that dive, when we got out to the seagrass and we were getting like ready to get back on the boat and everything, there's this loggerhead turtle out there just munching on the grass. And all of a sudden he just starts trucking and he did not care who was in the way. He was going to blow you down. He was just coming through. And again, he went right past me. So it was like, man, to have 3 really close encounters like that all on the same dive was just absolutely incredible. But, I love diving Belize. There's always something fantastic going on. So yeah, that's fantastic.
If there's something going on in the ocean, because we kind of had some aggressive sea turtles too. I was literally trying to get away from a sea turtle because it kept wanting to get closer to me.
Ours was aggressive. He was just sitting there eating, and then like a bunch of people like came around and they were watching him eat, and he's probably like, "Why are you all watching me?" And he just like took off, and he's like, "I am out of here." But yeah, he was gonna bull right through us. So it was pretty crazy. But you love when you have those dives that you have those really close encounters. And then a couple of days got canceled because of the weather. And then Kat and I went back out and we had 2 days of just phenomenal dives. There were like really big spotted eagle rays and we saw turtles and all kinds of stuff. So we had 2 really good days of diving after 2 canceled days. And then after those 2 really good days, the visibility wasn't as good, but we had these great, wildlife in there. And then we had a couple more days that were canceled for weather. So, you just never know. Sometimes that visibility is the trade-off because, it's bringing some more wildlife in. But that's a great way to get into our topic today is, managing expectations, because you can go to a dive site every single year at the same exact time. Like say, we go to Belize every single year in June, and we do the same week and we do the same trip, and it's always just like glass and everything's perfect. And then you go some other time at the exact same time this year, and it's 3 and 4 foot waves. The visibility is junk, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's a really important piece for people to understand when they're doing their dive planning, is that anything can happen, right? So you could plan a whole trip, get there, and every single day's dives be canceled because of the weather. Now, nobody ever wants that to happen, or nobody ever wants to think about it. But, there are some things like that we need to think about when we're, planning our dive travel, so that you make some kind of plans for what would you do if that happened.
So for me was going to Galápagos. I was told it's going to be very, very cold. So I, prepared having in 7 mil, my gloves, my hood. I got the shark skin socks, because I was preparing for it to be cold. And then turns out, because the El Nino, there was only 2 dives where I was actually kind of chilly. The rest, I probably could have gone with a 5 mil. So I was expecting coldness, but got warmness, but that also kind of affected being able to see the marine life with it being warmer. So, my expectations were high, but they still got met, with all the things I got to see.
Yeah, because a lot of the wildlife prefer the colder water. So they want to, if it's warmer on the surface or up in the water channel is warmer, they're going to be a little bit further down. We're getting ready to go to Jupiter, and we were talking to some folks at Jupiter, and they were saying they had an upswelling last week. And so right now the water is 82 to 85 degrees, but last week it was mid 70s, right? Just out of the blue because of that, so anything can happen for sure. I think that one other thing that happens is people are, I'm going to go diving in Florida. And so, if it's Florida, it's going to be hot and the water's going to be warm. Well, not in January. So just kind of thinking ahead is okay, there could be some things. If I'm going to Florida in December over Christmas or something like that, I might need a wetsuit. And so if you're looking for some tropical diving with no wetsuits, that might not be your jam. I know when we first went to Hawaii, I just immediately thought it was going to be, just beautiful weather, flat seas, everything's warm, don't need a wetsuit. Well, first of all, you always need a wetsuit in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And, diving different times of the year, if you dive in the summer, you're going to have a lot better conditions on the water. You're not going to have all of the winter waves in the north and all of that kind of stuff. So the first time we went in the summer, we went in May. And then when we went again, we went in December, and it was just totally different. But, living in Missouri, my view of Hawaii is this picture perfect view that I see on TV. So I had to really kind of bring in my expectations and say, oh, okay, well, it might be sunshiny and warm outside, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be warm and beautiful underwater.
Right. Yeah.
I think you can also look at that as far as dive boats. I know we ran into this in Key Largo. Some boats have a guide in the water and some don't. When you're drift diving in Florida, I think most of the operations there have, and what I heard somebody call today a dive ambassador. And so the dive ambassador, so, don't call them a dive guide. They're not guiding you, or dive master, because dive master kind of indicates that maybe they're, teaching you in some way, but a dive ambassador, they're carrying the float. And so all you have to do is follow them. And you get in other areas and they might not have someone in the water. So you can't just assume that you're going to have a guide in the water. You can't just assume that there's going to be boat snacks. I've been on boats that don't have boat snacks or that don't have a bathroom.
That's horrible, not having snacks. You're hungriest right when you get on that boat.
Right.
You gotta have snacks.
I know. But things that I didn't even think about, like we were in Hawaii for the night dives and they had like hot chocolate and stuff on the boat. And that was fabulous. But you can't assume that that's going to be all of the different boats because a lot of them do a little bit differently. And some are really small boats and bigger, other bigger boats. And you got to ask a lot of questions and keep your expectations in check, I think.
And you will always bring the Tootsie Pops.
Absolutely. I already have them packed for the next time. But I think for most people, as long as you stay flexible and kind of go with the flow, you can figure most things out. And most of the shops will send you some kind of, informational email ahead of time. I always try to go to the frequently asked questions on their website just to make sure. I know all my expectations, like I had all kinds of anxieties about the Texas Liveaboard, and most of those did not even turn out to be anything, right? Like my expectations were so out of whack. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. And then it was just so much easier than I thought it was going to be.
I have that like with currents. Like I know that when I do these liveaboards, currents are a big possibility. And I have not experienced, I experienced some pretty bad currents and I was extremely nervous about it, but I handled it well. But yeah, I was expecting really bad currents and me possibly getting just totally pushed and gone, but it didn't happen. But I faced my fears and did all my training and it was great.
There was a time, because South Florida drift diving, right? You expect there to be current. You're letting the current carry you. And that's fine. Hopefully you don't have to turn around. Just let it carry you. But there was one time the current was so tough. Me and Kat were kicking with everything we had and we were just not getting anywhere. And I am a no touch person. I try not to touch anything, but like I had to put a finger on that coral and hook on and just to rest for a second because it was so tough. And so there's, me and Kat are kind of hanging on just because it was so hard to even stay because we were kind of on the side of a wall. So that was blocking a little bit of that. But even being able to stay on that side, it was crazy. So again, and if you want to dive, a lot of times you're going to have to roll with it, right? You're going to have to roll with whatever there is. And so it might be a little tougher or the visibility might be a little bit less than what you're used to, or the temperature might be a little colder. But you just adjust to it and you'll do well.
Just so people know, I was not holding on to coral. It is rock. It is rock. At Cocos Island and in Galápagos, it is rock. I did not touch the coral.
In Florida, I am sad to say I had to put one finger on the coral, but I did it in a really solid place and tried not to disturb anything. But
right, yeah. I just had one person question me about that. Like, so you just hung on the coral? I was like, no, it's rock. It's rock. So.
Yes, we definitely try not to cause any damage while we're down there. For sure. I know, like, some people in different places, they have to use a reef hook. I haven't had to do that yet, so that's not something that I'm very familiar with. But I know that there's certain ways that you can use a reef hook to not damage things. But just keep learning, always learning, right? Always learning and doing the best you can. I always say that I am very imperfect. I try not to cause damage. I try to do all the things right, but we're all a work in progress, right?
Right.
So we talked about weather. We talked about temperature. We talked a little bit about boats.
Having a good dive, buddy.
No, but that really is a good thing to talk about. If you're ever traveling solo, especially if you're traveling solo, and you could get paired up with anybody. Even if somebody is new, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. I've heard so many people, they're like, oh, I don't want to get paired up with somebody who's new. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. And everybody was new at some point in time, right? Like all of us were at a point where we had 6 dives. We went through a tank really fast. We probably swam around too much. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that person's a bad diver. And, the dive community is great about being very welcoming to everybody. But, I see the reverse happen a lot where I see people who maybe dive once a year. They don't practice their skills in between. I've heard people say before, well, I don't take a DSMB because everybody around me has one. Well, you can't rely, you can't put that on everybody else. You still need to be responsible for yourself. So if you have these really high expectations of your buddies, and sometimes it's buddies that you don't even know, and they'll be like, oh, well, yeah, whoever they pair me up with usually has it under control. Usually,
no.
but that's a good reason to be out there practicing your skills and making sure, because I personally, if I get separated from somebody, and I could get separated from somebody that is not at all my fault, right? That the visibility just went to crap, or they took off for whatever reason, or something happened, I could get separated, and I've got to know how to handle myself, right? So especially when you're talking about safety issues like launching a DSMB or something like that, I got to make sure that I'm able to handle myself.
With Galápagos, everybody had to carry their own DSMB, and then they also had us attach inflator hose, attach this like horn. So like if you surface and like the boat doesn't see you and stuff like that, but you have to make sure you put your head underwater, because otherwise that horn is gonna rupture your eardrums, they said. So I didn't expect that for a safety equipment. So I thought about maybe getting that to add to my equipment.
I have one. Mine sounds like a duck call underneath the water, but it also will be a horn above the water. Now, some of them work under the water and over the water, and some of them do not. So you got to be careful which one you're buying to make sure, because I want both, right? I want to be able to signal somebody down below or on the surface if there's an issue. Another one of the things we're talking about Florida, and you have these expectations that if I go to Florida, it's going to be warm and sunshiny, it's going to be beautiful, and I won't need a wetsuit, and I can just dive in my bikini or whatever the case may be. Where you dive in Florida matters a lot too. Somebody might go down to Florida and they go to Key Largo and they go out and it's just glass out there, and they, have really, really good dives and everything's super easy. And then they go to Jupiter and all of a sudden it's drift diving. So it's very, very different. Now, all of that has the coral reef, but then if you go anywhere in the Gulf side, the Gulf is sand. They've got some artificial reefs down there, and you're going to find shipwreck, but there's not a traditional coral reef there. So I know when we went to Panama City Beach, we did some diving. We did our wreck diving cert out there, and there's some really, really cool wrecks out there. But, if you're thinking that you're just going to find the traditional strip of reef out there, you're not going to find that. So it's a lot different. And so, if somebody's not really into wreck, then, they could be pretty disappointed by going to the Gulf. But you'll also have people in groups too, and they'll be like, I'm going to such and such city. I want to go scuba diving. And, there's no shops in that town. I feel like there's a lot of expectations around, or a lot of assumptions when it comes to Florida and Hawaii. And so we'll see people post in some of the groups, and they'll be like, I'm going to Hawaii to dive, and people will say, well, what island? And they'll be like, I don't know. Well, that's going to make a big difference of what you're doing, because people are like, can you recommend a dive shop? Well, if you're in Hawaii, you're not going to do as much shore diving. There is some shore diving, but you're going to want to do the manta ray night dive. And then if you're on Oahu, it's going to be more so wrecks. But if you're in Maui, you can do whatever you want. Shore diving, boat diving, anything. People will say, oh, I want to go to Niihau. Well, Niihau, you can only get to in the summer. So, there's just all of these things. And so it's not just like, oh, well, I'm going to go to Hawaii, I'm going to go diving, and it's just going to be this easy thing. Obviously, good planning and research. Ask questions in the groups, right? There are so many wonderful groups. There's, if you're a diver in the Midwest, there's the Midwest Mermaid Scuba group. There's Girls That Scuba. I know we have several Pennyroyal Divers group. There's one for the Midwest divers, something. I can't remember exactly what it is. But obviously, there's groups in Florida, there's groups all over the place. Girls at Scuba is probably the biggest one that I know of.
Yeah.
So if there's somewhere that you want to dive, somebody in there has been there before and can probably give you a little bit of information. Ask the questions and get some information. Do a little bit of research, and that is going to save you a ton of work. And then be flexible.
Just got my Bonaire book to prepare myself for Bonaire.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And I ordered a compass. So yeah, the compass is something I never had. So I'll definitely get to use that.
Bonaire is so different than anything else that I've experienced, and everybody says, shore diving capital of the world. It's so different to just like drive your truck out there and you've got this yellow rock on the side of the road that tells you that you're at the right spot and tells you you're at Alice in Wonderland or Salt Pier or whatever. There are not yellow rocks everywhere else in the world. So if you go to Bonaire and then you go somewhere else and you have that same expectation, you're probably going to be disappointed. Diving in Bonaire is crazy. Especially all of the shore diving, just the opportunity to dive is amazing. And we've done really good with visibility, with current, the ease of diving in Bonaire is very, very nice, especially even open water divers. Being able to stay shallow and still see a lot of stuff has been great. So I'm super excited.
Mm-hmm.
Only a couple more months.
Yep.
I'm heading to Florida here in a couple of days and doing some stops along the way. So I'm going to the Florida Springs first, and then I am heading to Riviera Beach, do some dives with Pura Vida. Then my friend Maka from Kung Fu Divers is going to take us diving at the Blue Heron Bridge. Hopefully. That's another one. Expectations. Yeah. So the Blue Heron Bridge, that's one you got to keep your expectations in check, because I cannot think of how many times that we have gotten canceled for something like sewage in the water because there's like a boat marina around there or some kind of crazy thing that the bridge, and you only get one shot at the bridge a day. So when it gets canceled, it can be pretty tough. But yeah, going to do the bridge. Then
so many seahorses.
Seahorses and octopus, yes. So there's usually a couple of octopus, and you can usually find some seahorses in the seagrass. So that's pretty awesome. After that, I'm going to do the Moat Aquarium Citizen Science Project, where we go out and work on the coral reef restoration and do some stuff in their lab. Then I've got a week diving with Jupiter Dive Center as a buddy with Life Waters. And then I'm heading back through and hitting a couple of quarries in Georgia, Diveland Park and Blue Water Dive Park. Quite the road trip coming up. So lots of video to come. Super excited. I'm trying to manage my expectations because all of the things that could possibly change along the way. Luckily, my friend Sarah is going to take me to the springs. She's lived down there her whole life, I think, and knows a lot of the ins and outs of that. It's going to take me Rainbow River drift dive, so that'll be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of stuff to do in Florida, a lot of different kinds of diving. So I'm excited. Thanks for joining me, Tara. We'll have to give Kat a hard time about missing it. And she is probably still tired because she just got back from Belize 2 days ago. So she's probably still tired from that and trying to catch up on work. But again, thank you for hanging out with me tonight and chit-chatting about some dive topics. We have got many more great episodes coming up for you guys. I'm super excited about some of the stuff that we have coming up. So do not forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the things. We so appreciate your support. And let us know what you want to hear us talk about. Let us know where you want us to go, what you want to see, because we are ready to dive all the time.
Meet up with us. Like meetups.
We love talking about diving too and always learning. So feel free to throw your topics at us. And all right, well, we better get off here because I got to go pack again. All right. Thanks again, Tara. See you guys later.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you'll go ahead and follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel so that you can keep up with upcoming episodes. If there's something that you'd like to hear about, let us know and we'll put it on the list. If you're a female scuba diver who's already certified and you live somewhere in the Midwest, go ahead and check out our Facebook community, Midwest Mermaid Scuba. If you're not already certified, go ahead and call your local dive shop and get started today. I promise you will be hooked. Now let's go blow some bubbles.